Hi folks, thanks so much for joining us here. Fullscript sponsored webinar, Dirty Genes. It is such my pleasure to have Dr. Ben Lynch. He is the best-selling author of the book, Dirty Genes, and the president of Seeking Health. This is a company that not only educates health professionals, but also the public on how to overcome genetic dysfunction. Dr. Lynch, thanks for being here.
Hey, pleasure, Dr. Lucille. It's always fun to be around you and catching up. So good to be here.
This is going to be great. So we can go Ben and Holly. I think that'll probably be better rolling off our tongues.
Sounds good to me.
That are viewing, just to let you know, obviously this content is going to be robust. If you have questions, you can use the chat feature to go ahead and ask those questions. They'll be slacked to me, and then we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. And so, Ben, I just want to say, I kind of want to dive in and get started because I think that with how prolific your work has been in the area of genetics, we could talk for a very long time. We're scheduled for about an hour, but it really is an honor and a pleasure because your work has profoundly affected my practice and most yet my outcomes. And so I can't wait to ask you these questions. You and I are both naturopathic doctors. So I want to start there. What led you, because everybody who it seems who goes into naturopathic medicine, I have a lot of mentees and certainly colleagues and, old folks that I went to school with, we've got a story about that pull that tugged us into this type of medicine, the philosophy component especially. But what about you, as far as your career in naturopathic medicine, what was it?
It was not a sudden one by any means. It was, I look back, it's easier always to look back, and it was kind of a brick by brick of experiences that led me to naturopathic medicine. First, it was kind of a failure of conventional medicine to help me while I was in college because I had a few things wrong with me and everything that was wrong with me, conventional medicine couldn't really fix. So it was kind of like three strikes there. And then when I was, prior to that, I was in high school, obviously, but I took a class, biochemistry, and I think I was a junior in high school, and I went to private school. And when I sat down and Mr. Lebo was writing stuff about how the body worked with, biochemicals, it was like I was playing with Legos, real life Legos. And I finally understood how my eye worked and how, things were reacting in the body. And I was so excited. I just fell in love with that class. And so that led me to choosing cellular molecular biology at University of Washington. And then I kind of got bored and not unsure what I really wanted to do. And so I got sick in India. I took a year off and traveled. And when I was in India, Ayurvedic medicine found me because I got really, really ill there. And so I took a bunch of herbs and I was fighting with the Ayurvedic doctor who was speaking Hindi to me. And I was telling him this is nonsense and a bunch of hogwash. I'm not swallowing these things. And he was like, get out of here. And my East Indian friend was like, dude, this is the only option you got. And I was like, good point. And I was really sick. So within 40 minutes, I felt amazing. Well, 80% better, not amazing. And I was like, that was cruel. And so when I came back to the States, I sought out an Ayurvedic doctor, and he turned out to actually be an ND as well.
Wow.
And so then I found naturopathic medicine, and the rest is history.
Now, 80% better, depending on how you were feeling. You might have been feeling amazing.
I was amazing. There was stuff coming out, all orifices at the same time. Yeah. And I was 6'5" at the time, and still am, and I was 160 pounds. So I'm 208 now. So
wow.
I was bad.
Yeah. Well, a healing crisis for sure that led you to the path. It's interesting what you say about biochemistry because I had sort of a similar experience, but it was around nutrition. And taking biochemistry when I was studying to be a bachelor degree nurse, I was like, this is how our body works. And these cofactors are all vitamins and minerals and, that make these chemical reactions happen in our body. And so they aren't just a couple aisles in a health food store, these are nutrients that actually we are dependent on. And it gave me this incredible respect for nourishment and nutrition and how vital it is to our health. So, all right, thank you for that. So moving further on, obviously naturopathic medicine, got your doctorate from Bastyr University. What led you to focus on genetics?
Well, naturopathic medicine is all about prevention, I believe, and it's also about really sitting down with the individual who's across from us and individualizing our treatments. And while I was in school and when I was precepting, I saw it happening. We take great histories, we spent time, but we would get to the diagnosis and it'd be similar treatments. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And for a while I was learning. I was like, okay, if this person has this, we give them this. Person has that, we give them this. And it felt kind of like a recipe book. And there was a moment when I was precepting with the late Dr. Bill Ray. Fortunately, he's passed on, but amazing environmental medicine doctor. And we were working with these super ill patients, and they all had mold toxicity or heavy metal toxicity or a combination of the two. And they would kind of be put on similar protocols. And it made sense. You're high in mercury, you're high in lead, you've got mold, here you go. Here's his system. Some got better, some got nothing, some got worse. And I kept looking at this and I was thinking, I asked him, I said, Dr. Ray, what's up with this? And he goes, well, some people that's just how it is sometimes. I said, well, do you think there's a genetic component to it? And to be totally fair, he was in his early 70s or late 60s at the time. And he goes, possibly, but that's not my area. And it's not really clinically useful at the moment. I say, good point. But I always kept that in my mind. And so it's like we're all individuals. And so we've got to be looking deeper, because I do not settle for when we have someone struggling with the condition and we're putting them on this protocol. In fact, I can't stand conferences that have supplement companies that say, here's a condition, and by the way, here's all the supplements that you should take for it. Yes, it's easy for us doctors, but it's disrespectful to us, because medicine is an art form, and medicine we should be thinking outside the box, and we should be thinking for the patient, not just drilling it down to a protocol like it's some recipe book that Aunt Jane across the street or Uncle Bob can do. Yeah. So I basically picked it up because I really believe firmly in individualizing medicine.
And genetics takes it one step further. There was something on Facebook. One of our fellow colleagues, Dr. Ben Reeves, had a post that said, it's not a protocol, it's a relationship. Hashtag naturopathic.
Nice.
And something that resonated with me a lot. So, yeah. All right, so I want to talk about what does it mean to have dirty genes. And I have to tell you, in preparation for this webinar, I was rereading the book, especially chapter number 7, because we're going to get to the DAO gene, especially, or DAO gene, I should say. But it just dawned on me, I've had this book for a couple of years, but it dawned on me that I'd never put dirty genes together as far as the double entendre of dirty genes, like having a pair of jeans that might be dirty. I was like, I see what he did there. And I was real late to the game, because I think that I know you for your genetic work. I know you for other things as well. We had a one-on-one way back in the day about even website. You're so helpful and thoughtful in how you give your knowledge and information to others. But so yeah, it dawned on me. I'm like, I see what he did there though. But in your book, so what does it mean to have dirty genes?
Well, hold up the cover again for a second. So you see that where it's dark on the few letters of dirty gene and part of the G?
Yeah.
And then that's dust. So imagine like you've been on vacation and you come back from vacation and, for a month you've been gone and your table's full of dust, and you take a light rag, and you don't use Pledge, and you dust it off, right? You clean it off and it's all clean again. So the concept of dirty genes is that we can clean our genes. And when I asked my Facebook followers, I asked them, how do you define dirty genes? Because I love hearing how other people think about terms. I learn a lot from it. And one lady goes, a dirty gene is a gene that's not functioning optimally.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Wow.
like, that's perfect. Other people were saying it's a SNP, it's a mutation, it's a polymorphism, you're in trouble, you're going to be sick. You know, there was all these things that it sounded more concrete and less malleable, less dynamic. And so a dirty gene, we have to remember that genes are dynamic and are, you don't have to have a SNP or a mutation or a polymorphism for a particular gene to not function right. Holly, you said earlier you fell in love with nutrition. Well, what happens if our patients are deficient in magnesium? Well, a lot of things will go wrong. Well, why will a lot of things go wrong? Well, magnesium is a cofactor for enzymes. Well, what make enzymes? Genes. So all I've done is take naturopathic medicine and prove its effect on the body epigenetically. That's it. So it's just repackaging it into a hot topic like genetics. And so dirty genes is simply a gene that's not functioning optimally, and naturopathic medicine and practitioners are the best ones to clean them up,
Or
hands
the
down.
duster.
We're the dusters. Well, actually, you're not. We're not the duster. The patient's the duster. We provide the right tools to use and the guidance of how to clean, but we are not the dusters.
You're right. In fact, I sit corrected because I think it was even Dr. John Bastier who had said one of the differences in naturopathic medicine is it is the patient who's doing the healing.
Yes,
We are just the facilitators and kind of their partners in crime for the most part. So
absolutely.
I mentioned we're going to dive into the book a little bit, chapter number 7 especially, and talk about the DAO gene, which now I call DAO gene,
Yep.
the DAO of genetics, I guess.
Oh, good
But so
one.
talk to me about what this gene is and how it relates to histamine.
Well, the DAO gene is well, let me back up a little bit.
Sure.
So Dirty Genes talks about 7 key genes in the body, and we call them the Super 7 in the book. And there's 20,000 genes
Right.
around there. So right there, you think, okay, Ben's talking about 7 genes out of 20,000. That's a stupid book. And I felt the same as you thinking this when I was writing it, and I changed which genes I was writing about probably 6 times.
Hmm.
And why I did that is because I was writing about COMT or MAOA or MTHFR. I was like, okay, these are brain, methylation, and so on. I need a gut gene. I need a gut gene. And while DAO isn't only isolated to the gut, it's also found in the placenta and in the brain and elsewhere. It's a gut gene for the book. So I selected genes that kind of compartmentalize the entire body as conventional medicine would, but I bring them all together. So there's brain genes, there's gut genes, there's detox genes, there's liver genes, and so on. So DAO gene is the gut gene of the book. And so DAO's job is to break down metabolized histamine that is produced outside of, well, that comes in from outside the body, or it's produced by other things within the body, but it is not made by the body. Make sense?
Yep.
So DAO works on external histamine. It doesn't work on, I should say, it works on extracellular histamine, excuse me. So the DAO gene works on extracellular histamine, and there's other genes, I'm not going to name them, that work on intracellular histamine. So the DAO's job is to process histamine that is produced from bacteria. Its job is to break down histamine that's found in drink or food. And those are the top 3. And so if you have a dirty DAO gene, if you drink red wine or drink champagne or alcohol or have blastocystis hominis, or you're drinking or eating fermented foods and a bunch of leftovers and not such great fish, your DAO gene is not going to be able to handle that histamine.
All right, so let's take it a step further and talk more about histamine and specifically, what is it? What does it do in the body? Why does it need to be broken down?
Great question. So we have to first step back again, and histamine is an amine, and it's produced from an amino acid histidine. And so high histamine containing foods can lead to histamine. Bacteria also produce it, so it's really not the fish that's high histamine. It's the bacteria that are on it, decaying the meat. So always wash your meat before cooking to rinse off that stuff. But histamine is beneficial. We need histamine. We have to have it. So it's not a bad thing. It's just like the three bears. We have to have it balanced in our patient. Too low of histamine in the gut, you're going to have a patient that's constipated and no stomach acid. That's bad. Okay. So too high histamine, you're going to have someone with acid reflux and diarrhea and leaky gut. So just right, you're going to have a brilliant, healthy patient. So you're going to have a little bit of histamine that's needed to stimulate the immune system, a little bit of histamine to stimulate blood flow, a little bit of histamine to release stomach acid as needed, not always. You need a little bit of histamine to stay alert and focus. And so these things are all important. And then to also kind of tell the immune system, hey, we got something over here, come and take care of it for us. So histamine has a lot of beneficial roles. It's just when it's too much, then we start getting nosebleeds, migraines, headaches, insomnia, leaky gut, all the things that you see in your clinic that seem like a myriad of symptoms. Is like, oh, wow, this can be a complex patient. It can be all from histamine. And then you back up and he's like, okay, well, why is the body secreting a bunch of histamine? And also, why is it not able to clean it all up?
Able to process it. Yeah, I love that point of education. I think it's great for our patients because I think it gives a bit of a respect for the body and that there's not anything really ever bad. It is about balance. When we think about cholesterol, there's no real bad cholesterol. LDLs have a very specific job to do. It's omega-6s, people think are the bad oils. It is about the relationship and the balance with other things that we have going on. And so it makes a lot of sense. Now, is there, I've heard of the term histamine intolerance. Is there such a thing?
Yes, there is absolutely histamine intolerance. You can have, there's two different types of dirty genes. There can be born dirty genes and there can be got dirty genes. And so, Holly, you and I are about 99.5 or 99.9 genetically identical. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So, I mean that in a blessed way, by the way. But there's like a 0.1 to 0.9% variation between us all, depending on what you read. And there's about, I don't know, there's millions of genetic variants. There's millions of different SNPs, but there's only there's probably 40,000 or 10,000, depending on what papers you read, that are actually functionally different. And so a person can become histamine intolerant if they inherit these genes that are born dirty. I don't even like them to be called born dirty because there's benefits to them too, which I do explain in the book. There's benefits to having certain SNPs. So, but histamine intolerance is, perhaps, Holly, you could eat a bunch of kefir and have some champagne at dinner and have some fish that was left over, a few days, and you're totally cool. If I came over and I had the same exact meal, I'd be having a migraine after a couple sips of kefir. And it's not just a dairy intolerance. It could be just the histamine producing bacteria that which make the kefir. The Lactobacillus bulgaricus is very high histamine producing. And so if I came over and I had just a sip of that and I got a migraine or a nosebleed, that's high histamine. Or maybe I'm more irritable or I'm hot and sweaty. So there's definite histamine intolerant symptoms. And our patients can become more and more histamine intolerant. And I will tell you, histamine intolerance goes undiagnosed for years for patients, years. And you're trying all these things, or taking antihistamines, or doing all these things, but they don't know that it's the stressors and their gut health and the foods and the drinks and the environment and the molds and the infections that are causing them to be histamine intolerant. So absolutely there is histamine intolerance, 100%.
All right. So if we got a dirty DAO gene, what are some of the things that we can actually do to support that gene and clean it up?
The first thing I always like to do is to think why. So, Dr. Robert Navio wrote a fantastic paper that you should all Google, not now, but later. Write this down.
Don't leave us.
Yeah. Cell danger response. So you can go into Google, type cell danger response PDF, and you will get Dr. Navio's paper. It explains naturopathic medicine and functional medicine so beautifully in a way that allows us to think that the body is not broken. It's acting in a certain way because it has to. And we know that. We all know that.
Compensating.
So with things that dirty a DAO gene, right, was your original question?
Yeah.
Okay, so things that dirty a DAO gene are bacteria, big time. So Blastocystis hominis, if you order a gut test, you know, GI map or doctor's data or Genova, whatever floats your boat, and you see Blastocystis hominis on there, that's a very, very high producing histamine strain. So you have to eliminate that, and that's very common. Now, do you blast Blastocystis hominis with killers? Well, I was kind of on that mindset, but now I'm reading that you have to use beneficial probiotics to crowd them out. You don't just kill, you have to, you know, build up. Remember, it's not the train, it's the train, not the bug. So you look for infections is a big one. It could be viral, it could be bacteria, it could be Lyme, it could be mold. So if someone, you know, runny nose is a constant one, chronic sinusitis, big time mold. And so what's going on? Well, your immune system is constantly on, and what's triggering the immune system? Histamine. So, but we have to focus on the DAO gene because it's in the gut. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So you have to look at foods high in histamine, fermented foods, leftovers. Um, what else? I got my list in front of me, a cheat sheet, because I can never remember them all. Fruit juices, some of them, especially like pomegranate or grape juice, those will get me going. Bone broth diet is huge. Bone
Right.
broth, uh, bone protein powders, what do you call those?
Right.
That's all the rage now. Um, Tomatoes, vinegars. Think of all the foods that you tell your patient to not eat when they have acid reflux. And when I saw that list, I remember when Dr. Hibbs gave me the list of foods to avoid for patients with GERD, I was like, they're all high histamine.
High
Makes so much
histamine.
sense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then eliminate alcohol and so on.
So, all right, those are some of the things that can dirty the DAO gene. What can we do to clean it up besides eliminating the infections, protecting the terrain, knowing that it's a turf war down there? What are
Yeah,
some things that clean up and support our DAO gene?
yeah, and I'll say one more thing. You can be born with a dirty DAO. So this is my genes right here. And the official name for DAO is AOC1 or ABP1. So DAO is a pseudonym. You know, like my full name is Benjamin. I go by Ben. I
Right.
won't tell you other nicknames. But see, I'm minus minus. So I do not carry this variant. Okay. So I was born with a clean DAO, and my wife was born with a dirty DAO. And it appears that she can handle higher histamine containing foods, but can she because she has joint pain? So you can have high histamine in joints, and those with rheumatoid arthritis have high histamine in their joints. And is
Right.
that immune response again? So the things that you do to clean up the dirty gene is the dirty DAO gene are the fundamentals. You start with the fundamentals. You do a gut test, you look for high histamine producing strains, and you got to fix that. You got to fix the leaky gut because the high histamine is contributing to the leaky gut. Not only, it's sulfur will do it too, but DAO gene is a big one. Um, so you find the infection and you eliminate it. However you do that, you look at the foods that they're eating and you modify their diet. Stress is a big one, huge, because stress releases histamine. So through meditation or breathing or sleeping, sound familiar? Naturopathic principles, these are key. And I love the Ora Ring because the Ora Ring is like having a coach that when you ask your patient, how was your sleep last night? I was fine. That's too subjective, right? You need objective data when it comes to your patient's sleep. And the Aura Ring will help solidify that. The Sleep Cycle app, no, it's trash. This is really good. So no affiliation, by the way. And it's all outlined in the book, and then I have videos on my Facebook page for a lot more detail. But you just use naturopathic medicine to clean up the dirty DAO, and you modify their lifestyle and their diet. That's the big one. And then you can go to supplementation too. That's more specific.
Right. Brilliant, beautiful. Now, I want to hit on something that you've mentioned a couple times, leaky gut, or as noted in the literature as hyperpermeability. Tell me more about the connection between DAO and this condition that we hear about so much in our modern day. And what I've noticed too is that it's a very frequently used layman's term.
Yes.
And I've got patients coming in saying, I think I have leaky gut, I think I have leaky gut, I think I have leaky gut.
Yeah, and I remember Holly, when I was speaking with you about your website years ago, you know, and I also said this in other conferences too, you know, you name your website the problem your patient is looking for. I have mtjavar.net on purpose.
Right.
I think I own leakygutsyndrome.org
Right.
because I will use that at some point because they're seeking for a problem. So, little business tip: don't name your website benlynch.com or joeschmo.com. Name it a problem that you really kick butt in, and it's sought after a lot, and you will be busy like that. So the I lost my train of thought.
DAO
Leaky
and
gut. Yeah,
leaky gut.
DAO and leaky gut. So high histamine is associated with leaky gut. So does high histamine cause leaky gut, or is it a result that leads to leaky gut? I look at all the mechanisms of leaky gut, and I don't know them all by any means, but I'm thinking of a few. If we get an infection, then we stimulate histamine to mount a response to fight that infection. Too much response that will lead to inflammation. Inflammation will lead to destruction of tissue. Destruction of tissue could lead to leaky gut. So, does histamine itself lead to intestinal permeability, or is it the immune system that's upregulated because it's fighting something, and it's upregulated because of the histamine?
Right.
So it's hard to say. But all I do know is histamine is definitely associated, and when you do reduce the histamine and eliminate the infection and heal the gut, the leaky gut goes away. So, as I said, hydrogen sulfide or sulfur-containing foods and drinks can also lead to sulfur drinks. That sounds foul, but they do exist.
That does.
Green smoothies, there's your sulfur
Yeah.
drink. So these can really lead to leaky gut too, which is a whole nother topic with hydrogen sulfide. But yes, they're absolutely linked.
And then the best way to resolve leaky gut, in your opinion? I mean, obviously you've talked about a lot that goes behind understanding the contributing factors, especially with the genetic component and the histamine. Other tips and tricks?
Yeah, for sure. So stress is a big one, and I love Dr. Dan Kalish. He published a paper on GERD and his technique to resolve. No, sorry, published a paper on H. pylori and how to resolve that. And so if you type Dan Kalish, H. pylori paper or PDF, it's published and you can get it free download. But he talks about the stress component immensely. So first you have to resolve the stressors, emotional, physical, and while you're doing that, because that takes time, while you're doing that, you look for the infections and you work on eliminating them. And as I said before, I like to help healing the gut and not just kill. A lot of times you do have to kill, but be careful and don't kill too quickly. And at the same time, space out, maybe take the killers in the morning and afternoon, and then give the probiotics at night, and the nourishing, Althea and demulcents in the evening as well, right before bed. And then you can take the L-glutamine in the morning and lunch between meals or other types of healing components for the leaky gut. I like using probiotics, which Fullscript has by Seeing Health for supporting the reduction of histamine. So probiotic histaminics is a probiotic that's formulated to modulate histamine. So there's specific strains. And then there's histamine block, which is a DAO enzyme,
Right.
which eats up the histamine that is found in the gut. So the DAO enzyme, its job is to metabolize histamine. So they've now been able to isolate the DAO enzyme and put it in a capsule. And that's what histamine block provides. So I use histamine block for individuals who are struggling to change their diet or become more compliant. And when you're not compliant, you feel like a failure. So histamine block is a tool that allows patients to have their red wine as they're tapering down without getting the histamine side effects and the probiotic histaminics to help break it down as well and support that. But they're not the finishing touches. They're just, a tool to help the transition.
Yeah.
And so
I call that type of modality something called supplement your lifestyle. There's
yes.
lovely things that we would love people to do to get them, to drive the ball down the field when it comes to outcomes that some people just are not ready or willing to do. And so, yeah, that's my supplement your lifestyle sort of.
Yeah, because as I go throughout the book, I am very clear with people that I'm not perfect. I eat crappy food. I stay up late sometimes. I make choices that I shouldn't do. I dirty my jeans. But I give the mindset that it's okay to dirty your jeans, especially when you know how to clean them up. And so I want people to feel that they can be free and have fun and party and not be guilty when they're eating or drinking something or doing something that they know isn't good for their body, but it's good for their soul. That you gotta live and be free. So sometimes when you have tools that help people do these things and be able to feel free without getting those symptoms, that's great. But it's not the only tool.
It's an intermediate step.
Mm-hmm.
Coax them up along the way.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you a question. How do people respond to food that they eat often? I have a lot of patients that I'll come to understand through our history that they pretty much eat the same thing every single day, not varied at all. And usually after some testing, their diversity association is quite low, and they've got many atopic symptoms. And so what is it with people that eat? How do they respond to the foods that they eat all the time?
Yeah, when you order a food allergy test too, right? Those are the foods that you see on the food allergy test, right? And the IgE ones. Hopefully, they're not eating those all the time. But
No.
they're eating the IgE inflammatory foods, and those are the foods they eat always. And so, what is going on with that? It's again for me, it's hard to say. I do know that rotation diet is super important. I'm guilty of that at times as well, about limiting too much of certain foods because you get in a habit, right? And it's hard to break that habit. But is it that I think diversity is a big one. I think you nailed it. So I think if you're eating limited amounts of foods, there's only that food is going to support certain parts of your microbiome, and then other parts of your microbiome are like, hey, what about me?
Yeah.
And they're clamoring, and then they die out, and now your diversity is gone, and you needed those for do certain things, and they're gone now. So the bad guys come in, and you're also not secreting things. Maybe you're not making butyrate. Maybe the butyrate producing microbiome were now eliminated. Maybe the oxalate metabolizing critters are gone. So maybe the histamine metabolizing bacteria are gone. So I think you nailed it. I think it's as your diversity goes down, as your diversity of food intake goes down. And the more diverse your food intake, the more diverse your microbiome, the more tolerant you are of a variety of foods because you have different tools in your microbiome that can handle different things. A lot of us think, and I thought this for years, just until about 2 years ago when I was formulating probiotic histaminics, my respect for the microbiome went from here to the moon and back, all right, to Pluto, if that's even a planet anymore. I don't know if they downgraded Pluto or not, but it is so powerful. And so lately, a lot of my research has been, how do we really support the microbiome? And food diversity is a big one. And so I totally agree, Holly, that we have to increase that diversity.
Yeah, I think it's just a great cue to remind people to eat locally and also then seasonally as well, because that at least gets them into that habit. And I think that living foods, exactly. So you talked about DAO being the gut gene, and especially for your book, that's the one that you chose out of the other 6 for the gut gene. What does it have to do when it relates to stomach acid?
So the DAO gene, interestingly, is not found in the stomach at all. So, and that is an interesting thought. And when I looked at, so there's a website called Gene Cards, and it's great. You can type any gene that you want and go into Gene Cards, and they have a table of all the major organs of the body and tissues, and they show how much of that particular gene is expressed in each tissue.
Ah.
So in the stomach, the DAO gene, empty, not there,
Wow.
gone. And why is that? Histamine secretes stomach acid. So if we have the DAO gene in the stomach, then we're not going to have stomach acid. That's a problem. So the body regulates it somehow. I don't know how off the top of my head. And also the DAO gene requires a more alkaline environment, which is how the tissues are, how those genes can turn on and off, because the pH, they're very pH dependent. So the DAO gene requires a more alkaline environment, and the gut should be more acidic. Well, the stomach especially.
Yeah.
So it does not reside there at all. But acid reflux, I was reading reviews from provided Histaminics, and people said, "Oh, my GERD is gone." I was like, "What? That's weird." And I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." So.
Yeah, and you had mentioned when you've seen the list when somebody has GERD to avoid all high histamine foods.
Yes. Yeah. And I see this all the time. I've got one of Theo's absolute best friends has been struggling with acid reflux his whole life, and his parents just removed his tonsils, and they said, well, he's reacting to something, and the doctor said, oh, it's just kids just react to certain things, and we don't know why. And so they've been going down the conventional route, but somehow maybe they figured out who I was or something, and they asked if I see patients, and I said, well, I see people for free every now and then, and I work with them, and so I was basically, I want to help this kid because I know I can help him, and it pains me to see him struggling. So they said, well, we'll reach out, when it works out. I said, perfect. So you just plant the seed, and I'm not forcing anything on him.
Yeah, and like that, I'm sure. I can't wait to hear the end of that tale.
Yeah.
Great. So you mentioned a bit before about taking antihistamines. Very common conventional approach, over the counter. It happens all the time. People self-medicate. Why can't people just take antihistamines to lower their histamine reaction?
Yeah, and a lot of people do, and they do work a lot of times. I mean, we take antihistamines for acid reflux. We take antihistamines for migraines or for insomnia, or paranoia, or headaches. We take these things, and they really work. And I remember I got an email from a dear friend saying, Ben, I haven't slept literally in like a week. It's ridiculous. And I swear she's got mold and other things going on, but so, never mind. And she just was not a compliant person at all. And I said, well, try Benadryl and see if that helps. And she emailed me the next day, and she's like, oh my God, I slept like a baby. So then it's a good quick diagnostic tool. Say, oh, that's high histamine.
Yeah.
Is it the solution? Absolutely not, because what did it do? It just prevented the binding of histamine to the receptor. That's it. So the histamine is still there, it's just not binding. And then when as soon as that drug wears off, histamine comes back. So you gotta figure out why the histamine is there, and you can't just give supplements that metabolize histamine. You can, but then we're not solving the problem. You got to find the mold, you got to find the infections, and so on. And so antihistamines can be great diagnostically, but I will also mention I did a little experiment with probiotics mix this morning with myself. I'm reading something, I can't say it now, because I don't even know if it's legal. But I did it to myself first, and I was reading research, and then I did it to Theo, and he goes, Dad, I'm feeling really tired. And it was within minutes of giving him the probiotic. and he doesn't usually. He goes the other way. He's usually like, oh, I feel great, I feel strong. He's like, I feel kind of tired. So I cleared his histamine like that with like an eighth of a pill of the probiotic Histaminics. And so, and I will say he didn't take it orally. So that's
Okay.
all I'll say.
All right.
Okay.
So we have an absorption thing
Yes.
that we're not
It's
talking
very
about right
fast. Yeah.
now. All right. So I want to get to a couple bonus questions, but before that, I actually have some questions for you. All right.
Yep.
All right. Tracy C wants to know if you can repeat the name of the probiotic that was mentioned.
May I?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, it's Probiota Histaminics, and I should have a bottle here, but I don't. But it's by Seeking Health, which is my company, and Fullscript has it. And then so the way I like to use, may I go into a little bit of detail on that?
Sure.
So probiotic histaminics is a mainly bifidobacter probiotics with specific lactobacillus as well. And most probiotics do not have bifidobacter infantis. And most probiotics have a lot of other variant species that may not be supportive of histamine moderation or metabolizing it. God, that was a good sentence. So I handpicked these strains to go into probiotic histaminics by Seeking Health, and Bifidobacter infantis is very expensive. And when I was formulating, I was like, wow, that's a huge portion of the cost of this product, which now makes me realize why most companies don't use it because it's so expensive. But the Bifidobacter bacteria are very, very good for the gut. And there's another gene called FUT2. And if you are FUT2, going on a little sidetrack here, if you are FUT2, this one right, where is it? Right there, FUT2.
Yep.
Okay, see, I'm heterozygous, so I'm in the clear. This is me. I'm FUT2. That means I'm a secretor. And Dr. Peter Diadamo talks about secretors and non-secretors. FUT2 homozygous people are non-secretors. So if you are an FUT2, yeah, big time. If you are FUT2, you have to take Bifidobacter bacteria often because your intestines are not secreting and making a plentiful home for them, and you need prebiotics as well. So the probiotic Histaminics is a great supplement, and what I like to do for that is if someone has GERD or loose stools or high histamine symptoms, all described in the book, Dirty Genes, you can give them probiotic Histaminics with or without food, doesn't matter. It's in a acid resistant capsule, so it doesn't matter. And I would probably give them 2 to start. You can start with 1. There might be some remodeling there. Remodeling of the gut will occur, and you might see increased gas and bloating. You might see distension. You might see some altered bowel movements going from loose to hard or from hard to loose. That's just normal. If it lasts for just a couple days, symptoms should improve.
Right.
So, and then if you see improvement, great. If you see no improvement, increase the potency. So the original serving size of probiotics mix used to be 20 billion. I halved it to 10 because I learned as I was taking it for months prior to releasing it to the market that I needed 20 billion to start, and it worked very quickly, but I felt that it was too potent. I was getting constipation.
Right.
I was lowering my histamine too much. So if you see constipation in your patient, tell them to back off. And I discussed the pulse method in the book, Dirty Genes. If you are not using the pulse method, you have to be using the pulse method in practice. Also, if you see no benefit at all from probiotic histaminics, that is a sign that you have to run a gut test.
Get a little bit more specific, get more data. All right.
Yeah, it can't overwhelm it.
I have another question for you. Are you saying that drinking green smoothies can lead to an overload of hydrogen sulfide and contribute to leaky gut?
100%. Yes. Yeah. And I learned recently from Dr. David Quigg and Tom Altair. They did a great interview at the Environmental Health Symposium with Lynn Patrick and Walter Crinion. And green smoothies come from plants, right? And plants use the soil to provide them the nutrients that they need. And fracking is a huge problem. And so, and there's millions of gallons of wastewater that's getting into the soils and the groundwater, and these plants are taking it up. So kale is a huge sponge for cesium, and we're putting tons of kale in there. People are getting cesium toxic from that. Plus hydrogen sulfide bacteria feast upon the sulfur, and they get leaky gut from that. So be very careful with green smoothies. They're super potent. They're great, but I would not be going to town on them all the time.
I just heard literally a lot of heads hit their hands.
Yes.
Throughout our webinar sphere.
Yeah, they're too potent.
Yeah, makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, is there a way to measure elevated histamine levels in the blood?
Great question. Great question. Effectively, you can order a plasma histamine. You can. Oftentimes it will be normal because the half-life of histamine in the blood is 1 minute. A minute. You could have someone with full-blown anaphylaxis, okay? And then right after the anaphylaxis is gone, like immediately, they take a Benadryl or what have you, plasma histamine is fine, okay? So it's quick, the body gets rid of it fast. Now, if the plasma histamine is high, that's great. You know, it's telling, but just be wary of the false normals because
right.
Plasma histamine is very, very quickly metabolized, and urinary histamine is useful. Well, no, urinary histamine is also measured, but most of urinary histamine comes from the stomach. So histamine is mainly a Q&A time. It's you talking with the patient, and I've got quiz questions in the book, and here's a whole bunch of them.
Awesome. Yep.
Right here, getting seasick, car sick, bloody noses, and so on. So that's page 121, sweaty feet, frequently itchy, eczema, psoriasis, all of them.
And that's one of the reasons why I said that profoundly your work in my practice unbelievably has changed in the outcomes because of things like that. And this is really about a conversation. This really is about that relationship with the patient, not so much collecting the data, urine and or blood. So another question, why take probiotics at night?
I like taking probiotics at night because it gives them time to bind to the gut wall. So probiotics are great, but they have to attach and they have to make a home. And so if you take probiotics with food in the morning, and then you drink a liter of water, and then you eat lunch and you eat dinner, and there's this constant movement and peristalsis going on, and the food is moving through. And so I think they're going to be less effective. Now, I have people reporting back that they're taking probiotic histaminics a few times a day because they have to.
Right.
And I don't want them to, but they have to. They need to get better and healthier, but in the interim, that's what they're doing. So as you heal them, they'll be able to reduce it down to maybe even once a week, twice a week as a maintenance. But if you take them in the evening, you're not putting anything in the system, and they've got all night, hopefully a good 6 to 8 hours to work on binding.
Yeah, I think you were also talking about the removing part, especially if you had detected an infection that we did need to not only crowd out, but get rid of. That doing those things morning, afternoon, and then therefore taking the probiotics at night so they get that chance to seed.
That's another, very well put. Thanks for repeating that. Yeah, because I like to use antimicrobials. I like to use the not as potent ones in the beginning. I really love olive leaf extract. It's a good broad, I don't know if I can use the word broad spectrum, but it's it's wide active point on a variety of infections in the system. So olive leaf extract is safe, and it's not as blasting as oil of oregano. Oil of oregano is just like dropping a nuclear bomb, and people are like, whoa.
Unloading both barrels for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a question. Understanding that the DAO gene correlates with the metabolism of histamine, do you speculate that this is just a narrow insight into the metabolism of histamine or other inflammatory markers in the gut?
Repeat that last part of that question, please.
Yeah. So, understanding that the DAO gene correlates with the metabolism of histamine, do you speculate that this is just a narrow insight into the metabolism of histamine or other inflammatory markers in the gut?
I do not think it's narrow at all. I think when you take the concept of dirty genes and the DAO gene, there's multiple things which dirty the DAO gene. And so this is the pathways that I like to use. So here is the DAO gene right here, okay? And amiloride is a medication, sorry, it's backwards, which can slow it down. There's also metformin, folks. Metformin slows the DAO gene down. So a lot of patients are taking metformin and they might be histamine intolerant. Now look at what speeds this gene up here, HTC. Okay, histidine gets this histamine decarboxylase, makes histamine. And then it can also come over here. So all these things, catecholamines, benzene, environmental pollutant, inflammation, LPS from gram-negative bacteria, and so on. So you need to think more broadly, but I do think it's a great diagnostic tool. So if someone has histamine intolerance, I think it's very, very useful it gives you a great starting point because it's the first spot cleaning gene in the book. So when people do the soak and scrub process in the book, which is what you tell your patients to do all the time, it's
Right.
basically what their grandma tells them. And so they do that. And then I have them spot clean. I give them specific tips and instructions of what to do to clean the DAO. And you have to be methodical in which genes you clean first. You can't clean the MTHFR gene first. So you clean the DAO gene first. And so that's why we always say as naturopaths, fix the gut first.
Yeah, we sure do. Okay, so a couple people just want you to repeat the ring, what the ring is, the sleep tracking ring.
Yeah, this is Ora. Sorry, it's confusing with this. OURA. Okay. So this you can get oraring.com, and it's I forget the president's name, Harpreet. Harpreet, I think he's a CEO or president, I can't remember. Awesome tool, awesome tool. And so there's an app associated with it. So I have it in my health section. So this is my Ora app, and you will see, I'm fighting something. So it measures your body temperature too. And it also checks your heart rate variability, which is the best scoring device for overall health. And so there's a lot of things that this Ora Ring does. And you can sign up, you can get it your own, and you can become an affiliate as well, and you can make some additional revenue as a clinician. I can save you $50, but I don't want to be promoting you thinking that I'm making a commission off of you. So I'm going to refrain from that. You can go to oraring.com, become an affiliate, and people are loving this thing. I will probably be investing in this company. I love it that much.
So listen, I think all right. So I have one more question. How long should one keep a low histamine diet to help clean the DAO gene?
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, a low histamine diet, goes right back to what Holly said. If you're following a more restricted diet, and docs, folks, this is really important. The more restricted diet that your patient is on, what's going on with the microbiome diversity? Going down. So as you remove the higher histamine containing foods, the diversity of food is going down, and so is their microbiome diversity. So they're actually going to get worse, right? How many of your patients are on a dairy-free, lectin-free, oxalate-free, histamine-free, soy-free, right? So they're on all these free diets, and the diversity is way down. You're like, I get it, man, but they can't eat it. Well, then you have to find the infections. You have to calm the stress. I push vacations on people. People asked me yesterday in my Facebook Live, what do I do for Epstein-Barr and Lyme? I said, take a vacation. Take a vacation. Seriously, because it's the terrain that's messed up.
Yeah.
And so I do the low histamine, but I don't do it long term. I work on the gut, and I give them the probiotic histaminics, and I give them the histamine block. And we have also histaminics as well, and you give that away from food. So I've really covered the whole histamine thing pretty solidly because it's really important to hit. So you have probiotic histaminics as a probiotic. You have histamine block as the DAO enzyme that they can take with histamine containing foods or drinks, but hopefully they're not drinking. And then you have histaminics itself, which is a bunch of flavonoids and other things to help modulate histamine response as well.
Right. And I've got one question more from me, and then folks, there are some questions that we don't have time to get to, but I have to tell you, if you know anything about Dr. Ben Lynch, his information, he gives away a lot for free. You do Facebook Lives, you've got videos, your websites, the book covers everything that we've talked about and then some. And so I'm gonna leave it at that. But for our last question, Ben, and once again, thank you so much. Do you see any issues? Because I see this all the time when patients self-test genetics without any practitioner oversight.
Yeah, there's a that's a huge question. Yeah, there's issues, big time. I say the biggest issues lies within the testing report company themselves. When you order a genetic test and your patient sees this, the first thing that goes in their head is fear, scared, and they become in a reactionary mode. And they want to know how to fix the red and fix the yellow, and they ignore the green stuff. Okay, this is stagnant. These are stagnant SNPs. It's not showing you how the genes are acting real time at all. And the patients forget that, and the doctors forget that. So genetic testing is just another tool in the tool shed. That's it. It's like making a salad and all you have are sunflower seeds in your salad. That's not a very good salad. You know, you forgot even the foundation. You forgot the spring greens. You don't even have those in there. So sunflower seeds is genetic testing. It's the fine stuff on the top that allows you to understand things for you and your patient. You cannot use this diagnostically. You can't. You use it as another tool to show you susceptibility of what's going on with you and your patient. So if your patient and you are using genetic testing, and I offer genetic testing and soon, and we also offer a report, but I do not offer supplement recommendations, period. And I will never do that. I own a supplement company. I will not put supplement recommendations in there. And there are big name supplement companies, which you all know, that allow you to load in your patient data to get a bunch of supplement recommendations back. Shame on them, because it is not solving the problem. Genetic testing should be done, and I was just recently presented at the TACA conference, and I asked individuals, there's 1,200 plus people in the room, okay? And they all have autistic children, all of them. And I asked them, I said, when you received this test of any type, genetic testing of any type, MPFR, what have you, close your eyes and think back of what emotion ran through your body. And they all said fear, confusion, unknown, reactive, terrified, lost, confused. And the only person who said something positive was Dr. Robert Navio, who was in the room also. And he goes, empowered. And I said, yeah, because you know what you're doing. So if you know what you're doing and they know what you're doing, genetic testing is awesome. And the best thing to get started, seriously, is this.
Yep.
This is not, there's some one-star reviews on Amazon, but this is just for you as it is for your patient. And if you're sick of repeating yourself in the clinic to change your diet, change your lifestyle and all that, you can, I would actually even give them the book so you don't have to do it. And look, I want to give some examples. So there's a whole section of lab testing in the back, and there's certain labs that I break down for every gene that's discussed in the book, and why you order these certain labs and what they mean and what lab company to use. So that in itself, plus the quizzes you can ask as an intake with your clinic, is also very useful. So I would be using those quizzes as part of your intake. So, and I'm totally cool with that.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. It's, knowledge is power, but self-knowledge is superpower. So when you know more about your genes, if they're clean, they're dirty, or what they are, it's just empowering. Dr. Ben Lynch, I can't thank you enough. On behalf of Fullscript and myself, it's been a pleasure. You're so informative. You're so inspiring. You make a difference in our practices and in our patients' lives. And so I really want to thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. If you need any more information about Ben Lynch, Ben, go ahead and just rattle off a couple places where they can actually view more information or get a hold of you.
Yeah, drbenlynch.com. So go to drbenlynch.com, and my Facebook every Thursday for the most part. I have a Facebook Live, and doctors are on, and all those videos are there in Facebook, Instagram at drbenlynch.com, or at drbenlynch, but all that's at drbenlynch.com. Fullscript carries the Seeking Health products. You can get them there here at Fullscript, and appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.